Greetings, I am Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire. Welcome to Friday. We're going to talk about Pathfinder. It's a wonderful day. Traditionally, this is actually my day to go and play Pathfinder tonight. So when you see this video, I might be off playing Pathfinder with my friends. So, let's start talking about it. Today, I wanted to talk about what's on the character sheet. Now, this is the character sheet I prefer. There's one in the back of the book, which looks like this, but going back to the original, that's the one I use when I make a character. Let's explain what's on there. Now at our top here, in the corner, we have ability scores, which we talked about. Next to its modifiers, then gets the other number columns, which I like. There's the inherent bonus. This is where you put racial bonuses and bonuses you gain from leveling. Then there's an enhancement column if you have magic items which give you bonuses to those ability scores, and a temporary modifier one if you get spelled and change your ability scores temporarily. Traditionally, rather than listing what kind of change I have, like if I get a -2 or a +2 from a spell, I list what my temporary score is. Because I can quickly, on the fly, figure out the modifier. Okay, ability scores, that's what that chart means. We're going to go over. Now the next point is your hit points. That's the numerical amount of damage you can take. Things that deal damage do a number amount based on a dice and a modifier combined together, and that's how much damage you take from it. Whatever attack it is will tell you the modifier, and you'll sort of go over that all when you're building a character. I'll talk about that a little bit here. Now you have your total hit points, and you list your current hit points. And sometimes there's things called temporary hit points, which spells or abilities will give you a buffer of damage that you can take. That's temporary hit points. That's listed there. Now the other details down there, that's all information about your class. All the notes you want to make about it, about the numbers you gained, which I'll explain because they show up on the rest of the chart. So you don't have to worry too much about that. You don't actually even need to fill that in if you don't want. So let's talk about AC, armor class. You roll your d20, and you add all your bonuses together. That's how much you have to hit. Hit yourself. Now, everything else has an AC, so that number basically tells you what things need to hit you, and they have an AC which tells you what you need to hit it. Now, there's also touch and flat-foot. Touch AC means it's something like a spell or special ability that only needs to touch you. You don't add a lot of your bonuses that you get to AC, like armor and shield. You don't get those to touch. Those are things you add to your normal AC. Natural armor, if you have tough skin, you get things like your dexterity. Dexterity goes to all your AC, goes to your AC. That goes to your defense. That goes to touch. And other special magical abilities tend to go to touch. That's spellcasters will need to know that. Then there's a flat-footed. That's I don't have my dexterity because I'm surprised. That's that AC. So your GM might ask you for your flat-footed. If you're like, oh no, something's popping out of nowhere. You didn't see it coming. What's your flat-footed AC? You note these three here. You're going to be ready for whatever. Now the next three are your saves. Saves are when something suddenly happens and you have to react to it in a different way. Like fortitude. That's I'm getting affected by a poison or a disease and I'm trying to resist them. You know, like someone hits me with a poison, you know, a scorpion hits me with its poison tail. And you're like, I'm resisting its poison. I'm like, you know, not being affected by it. Or like, you know, something casts a spell on you that would affect your body. That's fortitude. Reflex is your ability to like suddenly dodge or grab out of the way. Like, I'm leaping and I missed the ledge. I missed like my jump. I have to quickly grab the ledge. Or I'm dodging out of the way of like a wizard throwing a ball of fire. Things like that are reflex. And will would be like a siren's attempting to control your mind with its voice, or someone's trying to confuse you with a spell. That'd be your willpower, your will save. So those are your saves. You have a base save based on your class, and you add certain ability modifiers. Fortitude gets your constitution, reflex gets your dexterity, will gets your wisdom. You can also get magical modifiers to that, so those numbers can change. Next up is your base melee and ranged. These are based on your base attack. Your base attack is determined by your class. It means that every certain levels you get a bonus number, which can be from 0 to 20, depending on your class, depends on what you get. And as you level up from 1 to 20, depends on it goes. There's classes that gets 1 every level. There's classes that get it every other level, and there's classes that get it 3/4 of the time. So for every 4 levels, you get 3, and that's how you determine those numbers. You have to see what your class gets, figure out what level you are. That's what you get. At first level, you're going to start with either a 0 or 1. A fighter would start with 1. A wizard or rogue would start with 0. Fighter's a full base attack. Wizard's a half. Rogue's a 3/4. But the first one for 3/4, you get none. Now the melee would be you add your strength. That's how you hit with a melee weapon. Range would be you add your dex. That's how you hit with a range-based weapon. Those are those numbers. CMD, CMB. They are, if I want to trip you, I have to make a combat maneuver attack. I've used my combat maneuver bonus, basically, to trip you. That's what CMB is. That's how good I am at doing things like tripping and grabbing and pushing, maneuvers in combat that are special. Now, there's rules for these in the books, and if you want to use one, read the rules on it. There are ability choices you can take which make them better to use. If you're just using them on the fly, it might not be too productive. You might have to take some of those abilities to make it if you want to use them. Maybe not. It depends on your character. Combat maneuver defense is how you, as a player, resist it. Now, the attack, a combat maneuver bonus, is based on your base attack, your strength, and a couple of special modifiers, including how big you are. Smaller creatures get less to these. Like a halfling or a gnome would have less. On the other hand, combat maneuver defense, again, halfling or gnome get the size penalty, but you add your dex, strength, your dexterity modifier, your strength modifier, and your base attack to your defense plus 10. Going back to AC, you always add 10 to it. 10 is the base AC. So even if you're wearing nothing and you have no dexterity, you still at least have a 10, which means things don't automatically hit you. There's still a degree of chance. So your combat maneuver defense is, I can resist being tripped or grabbed or pushed. Alright, skills are over there. Skills are based on your class. Now everybody gets these skills. Depending on your class, tells you how many skill points you get a level. Okay? Each skill can have a maximum rank equal to your level. Meaning first level, I can have rank 1 in anything I want. And I can choose any skill I want. You can look at the entire list and go like, ooh, I want to praise. I want to be able to tell how expensive things are. Or I want to know about arcane things. Or I want to be good at using special magic devices like wands, even though I'm not a spellcaster. I can use a wand. Those are what you spend your skill ranks on. Now, each skill is associated to a different ability score. The only one that doesn't add to ability score is your constitution. It adds your hit points, it adds your fortitude, but there are no ability scores which use constitution. That's an important thing to know. But all the other ability scores add different skills. Now here's where it comes in your choice. As I said, you get a number of points, and each point equals 1 rank. A fighter gets 2 plus their intelligence modifier points. It's always plus your intelligence modifier. A rogue gets 8 plus intelligence modifier. I'm going to talk about it, but humans get bonus skill points per level. That's one of their special abilities as a human. We're more skilled. We don't have all these special crazy racial abilities, but we're more skilled. We've got more variety in what we do. Now each class also tells you these special certain skills you're better at because you're this class. Like a fighter is good at climbing. What that means is if I put a rank into a skill that my class is good at, I get an additional +3 bonus to that, a trained bonus. Now your class will tell you these skills that you are trained in, the skills that you'll get that +3. Which means you don't have to get that +3. It just means it's an extra bonus and it means that you're better at it. Traditionally, classes that have more skill points will have more skills to choose from that they get that bonus. Rogue has this huge list of skills, but they get 8 plus intelligence modifiers. So that means you're going to have a lot of choices to make. Fighters only get 2 plus intelligence. They have very few skills to choose from. Alright, now let's talk about your special ability chart sort of down here. That's your class abilities, your feats, your traits, your racial abilities. Now racial abilities I'll talk about when I talk about races, but it's all the special traits that you get from your race, which could be like little abilities that you add damage against certain types of enemies. You get bonuses to certain skills, things like that. That's listed here. Your class abilities. Anything that your class has that's a special ability listed here so you know about it. Feats and traits. I haven't talked about feats and traits at all. I'll first talk about feats because they're the one that you're going to have. At first level, and then every odd level after that, you get a feat. There's an entire chapter in the base book of Pathfinder. This book, mine's a little beat up, there's an entire chapter on feats. What they are is they are an ability that you can choose, that anybody can choose as long as you qualify for it. You have to think about that. Classes give you certain abilities that you get because you are that class. Feats are extra abilities I can add in as long as I qualify it. Well, qualifications could be a class, or they could be an ability score, or they could be a number of skills, ranks in a skill. All these are qualifications, which could be for a feat. And once you choose your feat, you gain the abilities of that feat. They could make it that, you do extra damage when you attack, or that you get extra to attack, or it could be that you're quicker at acting in turn. Those are all kinds of things feats do. Feats are very variety, and they actually kind of stack on each other. Like there are trees of feats where you have to take one and you sort of stack up to get to better and better feats, which give you better and better abilities, but you needed those ones at the bottom. That's really interesting and really cool that you can get these like sort of ladders of abilities which can make your character very specialized and get some cool abilities. Alright, so those are feats. Traits? Traits are optional. Now, traits are mentioned in the Advanced Player's Guide. That's where they bring them in, and they only have a few of them. The PSFRD has a huge list of them. If you're playing certain special campaigns, they will give you campaign traits, which your GM will tell you if you have traits, and he will tell you if you have one or two. Traits are like feats, except they're not as good. They're like lesser feats. It's sort of like two traits may equal a feat, but you're probably not going to have a trait that has the same bonus because they don't stack with each other. There are very few bonuses that stack with each other. They're the same type. Traditionally, they don't. So, we have this little chart over here. This lists a couple of special abilities which you might not have. Initiative is the one you're going to have. Initiative means at the start of a combat, you roll a d20, you add your initiative. Everybody does that, and that's the order which everybody goes, from highest number to lowest number. That's a little basics of combat that I'm adding in now. Then there's damage reduction. It's a number that you're reduced that amount of damage if an attack comes, as long as it doesn't overcome a certain thing. It could be that someone needs to use a weapon that slashes people, or something that pierces people to overcome your damage reduction if you get it. Spell resistance is a number that's like AC for spells. They have to roll a d20, and they get to add some things, and they have to overcome your spell resistance. Very few people have spell resistance. You're probably not going to have it as your base characters. I can talk about ways you can get that, but that's there. Then we have resistances. Sometimes you gain the ability to observe certain types of energy, like I take less damage from fire, or I take less damage from electricity. They're listed here. You also down here list your proficiencies, which is your class tells you what kind of weapons and armor you can use. The weapons are divided up into simple, martial, and exotic, and sometimes it will list either just a big type, or it lists certain types, like, oh, I can only use this martial weapon, but all the simple weapons. And that tells you there's different types of armor. There's light, medium, heavy, and shields. I can explain all these types of armor when I'm talking about equipment, to sort of break down what these all mean, but your class will tell you the proficiency in it. It's listed here. Then down here, you list your armor and your weapons. That's the first page. And we've talked about a lot of the numbers and concepts on here. We've gone over a lot here. And so you already know a big chunk of how to play the game. Like when your GM asks you for some of these things, you're like, GM says, make a fort save. I know what to do here. I have my number right here. It uses my base save plus my constitution modifier added together. That's my fortitude. Oh, I have a modifier here. Oh, I have a bonus against certain types of fortitude saves. Is that a poison? I get bonuses against poison. Oh, I get to add that in. So next page. Equipment and gold. This is where you list your equipment, your magic items, and your gold, and any notes and stuff. There's not a lot on this page, but it is a very important page. Like, it's got a little chart here that tells you where on your body you can have certain magic items. A note about magic items that I'm going to say now. Some of them take up body slots. You can only have one of that type of item in that body slot. Like if it says it takes up your hand slot, it's like a pair of gloves. You can only wear one pair of gloves. Now this chart here doesn't say all the body slots. It has most of them. There is a chart on the PSFRD, that's the best one I think, that lists all the body slots. When you go into the magic item slot section, it tells you all the parts of your body you can put a magic item. Of course, there's some magic items that don't take up any slots. Like you could have something you pick up in your hand. It's not going to be like permanently in your hand, so you can put it down and pick up another one. You know, that's the sort of thing. Now, the last page is for familiar/companion and spells. Familiar/companion is certain classes either get a familiar, like a witch in tradition has a black cat, that's a familiar. A wizard could have some kind of familiar too. Think of Harry Potter, they all had animals, that would be familiar for you. That's something that you can have depending on your class. Sometimes it's something you automatically get, sometimes it's an option, but you could have like an owl, or you could have a rat, or you could be weird and have like a snake or a turtle. Those are perfectly fine too. Now, animal companion, there are certain classes that get things like wolves or lions that accompany them into battle, that they get better abilities than the traditional wolf or lion, so they can actually fight better, and they gain abilities as you gain levels, that they get stronger with you. Spells. Now this first chart up here is a chart telling you how many spells you get per day and how many you know. That's a tricky one. The knowing part only applies to certain spellcasting classes. There's two types of spellcasters, I'm going to tell you about them now. Spontaneous and memorization ones. Spontaneous ones know a bunch of spells, and every day I have energy to cast spells of those levels. They're called slots. As you can see, there's numbered from 0 to 9. 0 are always infinite. You can cast them any number of times. Every spellcaster, well, majority of spellcasters know some 0 level spells. You can just keep using them over and over again, forever. They're your like go-to spells that you always have. Now, 1st through 9th, which not everyone has up to 9th level spells. Some spellcasters only get up to 4th, some only get up to 6th. There are some that get up to 9th. It will tell you how many of each of those spells you have a day. It could say, I have 2 1st level spells. Or it could say, I have 1. Now, if I know stuff, that means, I have my 1st level spell here. I have 3 1st level spells that I know. Which one do I want to cast right now, on the fly? Oh, I need this one all of a sudden. Woo. Oh, no, I need this one instead. Woo. That's what it means to know them. The memorization means I might have some kind of book or material or studying material or some way of memorizing a number of spells from a big list. Now, this list could be the entire spell list, which is provided in the book, or you could have a spell book which ones are written in. Traditionally, you're going to have more options than the no knowledge-based spellcaster, but you have to choose them ahead of time. At the beginning of the day, you choose your spells, you write them down, you're like, I have these spells today. Oh, I needed this one in my book. Oops, I made a mistake. But, so it's sort of like a trade-off. I also probably am going to have less I can cast a day as the memorization one, but I have that variety. And I could switch them out. So tomorrow I could be like, oh, I need these 2 tomorrow. Oh, and this is like 4 of them. You only had 2 spells that you knew. I've gone through 4 spells that I needed. Advantages and disadvantages to both. And down here, you list your spells. And the spells each have details. They've got DCs, which means if there's a save involved with it, the DC is the number the saving throw has to make. That's what a DC is. If someone ever calls you a DC, it's a difficulty class. It means the number on a D20 roll you have to meet. It's going to tell you what type of D20 roll it is. Sometimes a DC is a skill check, sometimes it's a save, sometimes it's something attack-based. They're all varieties of stuff. It's always going to be like the difficulty. It's like an armor class, but for a challenge. That's a good way of thinking of it. Now, that's about all I need to talk about character sheets. I've gone over a lot of concepts here about playing the game. We're pretty set on role-playing right now. We've got the character sheet done. So, if you like this video, please leave a comment, leave a like. Please join the Empire. We're always looking for new members. Subscribe. And until next time, I bid you farewell.